Hello, it's Nick Payne here, and today I'm talking about machine maintenance and is it worth the time, effort and money. So I'd like to tell you about a friend of mine who actually works in Toyota plant in the UK, and he told me about how there was a guy there that they'd managed to convince, because this guy had the same model of Toyota as one of the managers, to not service his car because the manager didn't, because he was so convinced of the quality of that vehicle that it was never going to break down. So this guy said, right, if he's doing that, I'm going to do it. Bearing in mind that Toyota have been attempting to make sure for the entire time that product has been manufactured and built that value added time is going towards it. So they've analysed all that and found out what doesn't add value, and as an offshoot, over time the cost to produce products and vehicles reduces. It becomes safer to do the work. Quality of the vehicle increases such that it's quite well known that most Toyotas very seldom break down, and if they do, they have a whole method of feedback in the system to ensure future products don't. It's quite incredible. Now, this guy thought he didn't need to have his vehicle serviced at all, so he carried on driving it, and eventually it just catastrophically failed, obviously, because he needed to maintain it. But to his credit, I think the vehicle did something like 50 to 60,000 miles. Obviously this bloke, because he was working for Toyota, he was fully ingrained in the whole Toyota principle and how they operated, so it's quite easy to convince him, even though he might not have been the sharpest knife in the drawer. So that was one example of is it worth time, effort and money to maintain a vehicle, or to maintain machinery. Someone else I worked with was a multinational company, multi-billion-dollar company, and they had a whole system set up whereby the machinery was all shut down on a Wednesday and all the maintenance was carried out every single Wednesday. Now, this is quite good on paper. It seemed to work for them, and it worked for quite some time. And then with time, they had certain KPIs to hit, they had certain targets to hit, and towards the end of the month, if they hadn't hit the manufacture of a certain amount of material that's going through it, or a certain amount of product, they decided to keep those machines running. Now, talking to the maintenance, or the people in charge of maintenance there, they said every time that happened, within about 2 days, machines would start to break down. That meant that it wasn't just a quick fix. They generally broke down for like a couple of days, which then put production on the back foot right at the start of the month. Now this would carry on forward again. They'd get the things running, they'd manufacture, shut down on Wednesdays, towards the end of the month again, upper management decision to keep the things running. Which again followed the same cycle, within a couple of days all break down, put in production behind again in the first part of the next month, and so on and so on. For some reason they're reluctant to just take the hit for 1 month and just get on top of stuff and then keep it working, thereby decreasing the pressure. But again, it shows that they probably did need to maintain it and not stop, because they found that when they had the machines break down, it was quite difficult to fix them as opposed to doing a standard maintenance day. So when we look at that, do we need maintenance? The answer is yes, but why? Why do we need to maintain? Why can't we just build something and then it just continues to work? Well, the answer to that is due to our current technological level, really. All materials that we use are subject to wear and tear. They're lifed. We have drive bands and drive material that stretches, that goes beyond life. We have gears that run out. We have bearings that have a certain amount of life because they can only put up with a certain amount of friction no matter what we do to it. So yes, we actually do need to carry out some form of maintenance to keep stuff running. Now, what kind of maintenance are there? Well, from my experience of what I've seen, there are 3 types. There's breakdown maintenance. Some people only operate breakdown maintenance. That means they keep things going until it breaks, then they get someone in to fix it. That's clearly got some dangers, because you'll find that when things are running smoothly, things will continue to run. And then you get under pressure, you start to get to deadlines. Murphy's Law pretty much is going to state that that machine is going to break down when you least want it to. And I've seen that, and it's not good because it sets all manner of panic. And then you find you're not going to hit your targets, and you've got to find you're going to contact your customers, and then they're not going to trust you, and there's a whole knock-on effect. They might tell other people, which means you could lose business. The next sort of thing we could look at is scheduled maintenance, and that's based on either time or some other some of the method of measurement, like distance, for example. Worked in the Air Force, obviously we had aircraft that they were measured on hours flown. You might have cars operate on distance travelled. Other things could be just purely time-based, life-based sort of thing. And what that is, it says, okay, we know something's likely to break down in a certain time frame, so we look at it just before it does. Yeah, that's what scheduled maintenance is. And we do that with our cars. With a car, mine for example, has got to be maintained every 15,000 kilometres, so that's when I take it into the dealer and they service it for me. I kind of keep to that because it's quite important to have my car running, so I make sure that it is regularly maintained. Also within that maintenance schedule they know that certain things like drive bands will need to be changed at a certain point, brake pads will probably or brake shoes will probably need to be changed at certain times. Oils, gearbox oil needs to be changed after a certain amount of time, and all the rest of it. Filters, lots of things that we have on the cars that do need to be changed, and that's all done within that scheduled maintenance thing. Now the other thing we also have is conditional maintenance. So again, like we said, I've worked on aircraft in the Royal Air Force, and what we did before an aircraft would go flying would be to inspect it. There were standard things you had to look at, not an inspection, but checks you have to do to make sure that we're fairly confident that's going to fly okay. When it landed, we'd have a whole bunch of standard checks we'd have to do again on landing. We're looking for damage, we're looking for wear, we're looking for tear. We also have had systems of non-destructive testing. Like aircraft, we used to x-ray things. What you're looking for there is micro cracks, and if you find a crack when it's really, really tiny, you can change it as soon as possible, but at your leisure. And you change something then before it turns into a major crack, leading to a major incident. I've seen electrical panels where people take infrared pictures of the electrical panel, and they're looking for high temperature in amongst the electrical components, higher than usual, and that indicates that something's going to be failing soon. So you can change stuff up front then. Again, it becomes at your leisure when you change things, not at the demand of a broken down, panic-inducing machine. And you get organisation may do one of those three, or may do an amalgamation of all three. Now, obviously, working with aircraft, we did all three of those. So we had conditional maintenance, we're checking daily basis on aircraft. We have scheduled maintenance because we know things are likely to break in a certain time, or not break but fail due to lifing in a certain time. Then we have breakdown maintenance as well, because you're subjecting equipment to high G, taking it through extremes of pressure and temperature, and then smashing it into the floor in a controlled manner. That's called a landing. But we have that. Now I've been doing some work with rail, and they do a very similar thing with trains. So they've realised it's worth spending that money on maintenance because it extends the entire life of the train. It also makes sure it's more reliable to run, which means the customers are going to be happy. So if customers are happy, they're going to use you. Also as well, because it tends to be national, if customers are happy, they don't complain to governments. So when you start thinking about at that level maintenance, it actually becomes quite important and can get quite political. So that's kind of big organisations doing it. Can small organisations sort of be in control of their maintenance as well? And the answer is yes, because it works for all machines. So what we can do is we can look at our machinery and say, can anybody be involved in sort of daily tasks what we have with our machines to look after them? And sometimes I've seen where you've got production operators, people saying, oh, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a maintenance person, it's not my job. But there are certain checks that can be done, and I always say to people, do you have a car? And if they say yes, says, can you change the water? Or can you check the water level? Can you check the oil levels? Can you put air in the tyres? Can you put fuel in it? Can you top up the oil? That sort of thing. And generally they can. You get one or two people say, oh no, my partner does that, I don't have anything to do with it. But I said, well, I could show you once how to do it and you'd be able to. And they pretty much agree that's possible. So there could be stuff we have with our machinery and equipment and work that people can check. Like we can check things are tight, we can check safety guards are in place, we can check hours run if we've got that sort of counter on the machine. Things like that can be checked so people can have an active role in maintenance. And then what else we can do with our machines is we can find out what is the best likely thing to keep that we need to do to keep those machines running. We'll have several sources of information. We'll have manufacturers' documentation. Google's a great thing. We can find out a lot from that. We've got in-house knowledge, and we've also got in-house experience, because people will always let you know where things go wrong, and oh, that's always going wrong. So maybe we can incorporate that into maintenance. So what we can do there, we can figure out all the checks and tests that we need to do, and also the frequency at which we need to do those checks and tests. Then the trick is to make all of those things visible and have people actively monitor and be involved in that maintenance. Now, if you can get a lot of tasks for the operators to do, that can free up your maintenance engineers, mechanics and that sort of thing. That frees up their time to improve the performance of those machines, to get on top of those tasks they always want to do to make their machines run a bit better. And then finally, what we can do from that, once we get all that going and into place, is measure the performance of those machines. There's various things we can measure, and it's just a matter of choosing the right things and going for it. And yes, there is a system in all lean terminology called total productive maintenance, and that's what we want to do with our machinery. So I hope that's been useful to you. If you've got any comments yourself about any maintenance sort of activities you've been involved in, or if you'd like to find out more, just leave a comment. Share this to someone who you think might find it useful, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.